Welcome back, my friends, to TFT Hyper Roll with Artark and our introduction to Set 9, Runeterra Reforged. But there's a little challenge we are going to face in this introduction video. But before I explain that, graphic, like, comment, subscribe. You know the drill. It helps the channel grow because it feeds the algorithm. Anyway, Hyper Roll was not available at all during the PBE, so I could not test anything on the PBE. The only thing I have to go on is the 1v0, which I was not able to get into despite waiting over 3 hours one day. It just didn't exist. The closest I could get to Hyper Roll was this particular portal called the Sump, where it took away interest. So that was the closest I could get to actually playing a Hyper Roll style match in regular. But I'm going to do my best to tell you the builds that I think will work in Hyper Roll once the set comes out a little later today. Now, there are so many things I don't know that I'm really unsure of, and number one is whether you're going to be able to choose a legend for Hyper Roll. In the 1v0 selection for Hyper Roll, there is no place to choose a legend, so it's possible the legend mechanics, which are a major part of regulars, are not going to be in Hyper Roll. I don't know. I also know some of the portals that are available in norms will not work with Hyper Roll. For example, the one I'm showing right here, the Sump, would make no sense since it's based on not getting interest and just getting additional gold so you can roll as often as you like. So a big question with Hyper Roll players often is, can't I just use the exact same build that I use in norms for Hyper Roll? And the answer is sort of. And the reason is, often the norm builds stop at 8. You're building a team around 8 champions. Hyper Roll, you get to level 9 automatically through playing it. So you have to think in terms of 9 teams. Now let me show you something that changed in this set. Each augment can be rerolled individually, and rerolling an augment per time you're offered it does not reduce your chance to reroll future augments. So feel free to roll all of the augments that you want, because it is not going to impact your ability to get better augments later on. But let's jump into builds. The first build I think you need to know is the one that everyone is going to hate you for playing, and it is Void. And here is the reason. The 1-cost Cho, who is a Bruiser, will scale throughout the entire match. Every time he feasts, he's going to gain, at this moment, 60 health in Hyper Roll. It's 30 in norms, and it says in the tooltip doubled for Hyper Roll, making him one of 2 really good scalable champions for this set. Second, there are 2 natural synergies built into Void because Cho is a Bruiser and Rek'Sai is a Bruiser, which is going to give your team additional health. Next, Sorcerer. Malzahar is a Sorcerer, and Vel'Koz is a Sorcerer. So the base comp has a lot of built-in synergies. Next, you're going to be getting an additional body on the playing field, and that will either be the adorable little Void Remora you see here, the playful little Rift Herald that you will see pop out right here, or the fundamentally evil Baron Nashor, who will come out if you happen to get to 8 Void, which is not actually that difficult to reach because you only need 1 emblem in order to get there, since there are 7 Void in the game, and emblems are a little plentiful, at least in norms. I don't know yet about Hyper Roll, but it's pretty easy to get there in norms. One really important thing with Void is it is important to put the egg up front, and the reason is it is going to knock up the champions around it on the opposing team. Note this fight, that the other player is also Void and has their egg in the back. Watch what happens. Baron jumps out, knocks everyone up. It gives our team a jump. Their egg was in the back. It didn't knock up anything. We're able to get way ahead. We also had the advantage of having Baron. They had the Rift Herald. But I have seen far too many people put the eggs in the back and miss that initial opportunity to get some CC and keep themselves in matches. Void is also extremely versatile. You can go Void Challenger, you can go Void Sorcerer, you can just go straight Void. One of your key champions is going to be Kai'Sa. Items like Rageblade, Jeweled Gauntlet, Hextech, Gunblade are going to help a ton. If you decide to go Void Sorcerer, you bring in Ahri and Lux, and they will help fill out the team. You can even pull that off with 6 Void, but it's much easier with 8. Now, here's the thing. Kai'Sa is likely to be your top damage, even if you get a 2-star Bel'Veth. Watch the very end of this match, and you will see that the 2-star Kai'Sa that would have gone to 3 if we could have gone further ends up doing more damage than the 2-star Bel'Veth. Overall, Void is probably one of the easiest builds to win with. Now let's move on to the second build I think you should know, and that is Demacia. The reason is twofold. Number one, this is a 9-person build because you need to make it really strong. 9 Demacians. So you're going to need a 9-person team, which makes it pretty perfect for Hyper Roll. It can work at 7 with some additional help, but at 9 it becomes unreasonably strong. What also leads me to have faith in Demacia as a Hyper Roll build is Kayle. Look at the ability. Divine Ascent gains new passive effects as your tactician levels up. 1, 28 bonus magic damage. At 6, it's a 3rd attack that is a wave and shreds magic resist. 9, every attack launches a new wave and they travel further. Remember, key difference between Hyper Roll and regular is in Hyper Roll, you are most likely going to 9, whereas regular you often start at 8. So to take full advantage of Kayle in norms, you have to go to 9. In Hyper Roll, it's going to get there for you. So you're going to be able to take full advantage of this scaling champion who is a 1-cost and pretty easy to get. So even if you just outfit her with a Rageblade, you're going to have a very strong unit in your backline that is shredding the magic resist of the opposing team. And we'll get back to why that's important in a moment, but let's talk about how Demacia works. At the breakpoints 3, 5, 7, 9, you get 1, 2, 3, or 4 elite Demacians. Your elite Demacians are the strongest Demacians on your team, and they are going to get a bonus radiant item. And any champion who is adjacent to them is going to get bonus magic resist and armor. As far as positioning your Demacians go, you can clump them all in a corner kind of the way I did, but ultimately you just want to make sure that each of your elites has champions next to them so everyone is benefiting. You can separate your elite champions and then clump everyone into clusters around them. Now I want to break away for a second and talk about augments. I had mentioned you can individually reroll each augment. You can see that here, but I want you to take a look at healing orbs. This is essentially what's replacing Thrill of the Hunt. When an enemy dies, the nearest allied unit is healed for 500. What makes this better than Thrill of the Hunt is if you have a frontliner who is in danger of dying, but your backliner takes somebody out near them, that frontliner will heal accordingly. You can watch that here with Galio, as Galio repeatedly is knocked low and then heals as the backliners take them out. Ultimately, Galio gets knocked out, but it doesn't matter. Everyone else is already so low. Galio is so strong, he can finish off that fight. Now earlier I had mentioned why it was so important to shred magic resist, and that is because one of your Demacians is Lux, who is pretty much one of the strongest units in the game. As you can see, her laser beam just wipes champions off the board. You just outfit Lux with a blue buff and a jeweled gauntlet. That will likely make her an elite. She will get an additional radiant item, and then she will go to town on the opposing team. Your final Demacian board will look something like this, with Jarvan in the front line serving as the main tank, Kale in the corner just shredding the opposing team, and Lux pouring out damage. Now, if you are going to 9, I like to bring in Soraka and Taric. The reason is putting them together will give you Invoker, Sorcerer, and Targon. Targon will increase the healing and shielding on the team, kind of like first aid kit. Sorcerer will give Lux more power, and overall, if you can get Demacian emblems on them, you will have 9 incredibly strong Demacians that will pretty much defeat any team in the game. So why isn't Demacia my #1 build? The only reason is it takes 2 emblems to get it up to full power at 9. You can create it with a spatula and a Negatron cloak. So there are easy paths to it, but it's not quite as easy as getting to the 8 void. 7 will usually guarantee you a top 4 finish if you can 2-star Lux and Jarvan, but it's something to keep in mind as one of the strongest builds I've seen. Now, I would love to take credit for this third build, but it was actually suggested to me by, I hope I'm pronouncing it close, Jiandong Li during last week's live stream. And yeah, I love this build. It combines Multicaster and Invoker, but in such a way that it's going to really require a team of 9 for it to reach full power, so it's not going to work quite as well in norms, but it will work brilliantly in Hyper Roll, where again, we automatically go to a team of 9 just by function of how the entire thing works. Now let's discuss what the build is and why I think it is so brilliant. First off, it's going to be your 4 multicasters who are Teemo, Sona, Taliyah, and Vel'Koz. So they are covered by the time you get to tier 3, so you're not relying for your real carries on the late part of the game. You should be able to get them fairly early in your match. So what do multicasters do? They cast multiple times. At 2, they're going to do 2 casts, and at 4, they're going to do 3. The additional casts are at slightly reduced power, but when you have Teemo and Vel'Koz casting all at once, yeah, it doesn't really matter. And the Invokers, well, they're going to have the team in general casting more often because they're giving you bonus mana, so it all works together really well. Now you're going to start this build with Swain up front, and that is because he gives you both Sorcerer and Strategist. The Sorcerer is going to enhance Vel'Koz's power. Strategist is also going to give the front line a 200 health shield and the back line 20 additional AP, so that equals more power. But Swain will be transitioned out a little bit later, and I'll explain why. You want to bring in J4 for 2 reasons. He is also a strategist, so you will get that shield and additional AP, and he is also a Demacian. So you will now have 3 Demacian with J4, Galio, and Sona. So you're going to get a radiant item, most likely on J4, which will make him a very effective tank for holding up the front line. Now let's pretend we're in Hyper Roll and we've gotten to stage 9. This is your final team. You have Soraka, Karma, Shen, and Galio as your invokers, Vel'Koz, Teemo, Taliyah, and Sona as your multicasters, and then Jarvan will be your 3rd Demacian and strategist. This will give you the ideal combination to put together and make an incredibly strong casting team. You will pretty much be guaranteed top 4, if not winning outright. Now, staying in the theme of invokers, I want to show you a build I actually did develop myself, which is combining Shadow Isles with Invoker. I chose this because Shadow Isles also gain mana as part of their ability, and so coupling that with Invoker is going to help them to cast more often. The Shadow Isles are also quite powerful and synergize really well with the Invokers. You can start this with Viego and Maokai, but ultimately you want to get to Kalista and Maokai, and then get a Rageblade onto Kalista. She is really strong for a 3-cost unit, especially if her attack speed is increased. She is going to just fill people with spears and then rend them out, and they will just start disappearing off the board very quickly. Early game, you're likely going to want to bring Taric in, as that will tick Bastion along with Maokai, so that will give him a little more tankiness up front. It will also give you Targon for the entire team that will increase healing and shielding, and that's critical because Soraka is one of your key invokers that you're going to want on the team. They're going to keep you alive and let Kalista do her thing. Now, the hard thing about this comp, and the reason it is further down on the list, is you're relying on 4 and 5 cost units to complete it. You need to bring in Rise as an invoker towards the end. You need Senna as your final Shadow Isle, and you need Gwen also as a Shadow Isle. Gwen is a 4 cost, Senna is a 5 cost, Rise is a 5 cost. Also, Shen is necessary and is a 4 cost. If you don't get all of them, it's going to be difficult to win, but you'll still likely be able to get into the top 4 if you can put together 4 Shadow Isles and 4 Invokers. Rageblade is also a key item for Senna. She is going to be able to keep your team shielded and increase their attack speed, which is going to help, well, just about everyone involved, because every time she shields them, their attack speed increases. Rise will depend on what board you're on, because he has different powers based on the boards. We're not exactly sure what boards are going to be in Hyper Roll, so it'll be a game time decision as to how you're going to use it, but this is a very strong comp. When it comes together, you're definitely in the top 4. So there's a little backstory on this final comp. On the very first night they released all the information for the new set, I decided to take every bit of it, plug it into ChatGPT, and say, analyze all of these champions and all of these traits and tell me what the best build is based on it. And it said Bruisers and Gunners. And I have tried it several times, and it has done surprisingly well. Bruisers are pretty much the same as they are every time they've been offered. They get increased health for the team and more for themselves. Gunners get increased attack damage with each attack. So it's classic TFT. Big, beefy frontline, strong backline. You can usually start the build with Cho and Renekton, Tristana, and Jinx as your first 4. Renekton will ultimately come out as you get the higher cost Bruisers, and Tristana will come out once you can pick up Zeri and Senna, who are the other 2 Gunners. There are 5 total. If you can get an additional Gunner emblem, put it on Rek'Sai, as she benefits from AD. Cho will stay in the entire time, since Cho scales throughout the entire match, picking up health as he continues to feast. Jace will be in between 2 of your Gunners, as his ult causes them to speed up. Zeri is basically the ace in this set, as she will execute anything with 12% health or under. This is a very interesting and strong combination that I have found often brings me into the top 4. My feeling is it will work even better in Hyper Roll than it does in Norms, as you will have better access to some of these champions earlier. Getting Zeri early usually means an easy win. Get a Rageblade on her. If you have trouble finding her, you're gonna have trouble winning, because she's what's going to carry you in the late part of the match. Now, over the next few days, I'm going to be posting videos from the PBE that were done in Norms, because as of when I'm recording this video, and even when it's posting, We haven't seen what Hyper Roll looks like yet, so I'm just doing my best to guess how it's going to be. With the number of games that came down with Void, multiple Void teams in the top 4, I really think that is one that is going to be abused, but it has a lot of room to work, so even with competition, you can get into the top 4 with it. This Saturday and Sunday, I will be doing Hyper Roll Live starting at noon Pacific time, so we'll all get to kind of learn a little bit together. Hopefully next week I will be able to put out Hyper Roll specific games and then come out with a video with the builds that are really working. But I hope this initial video gets you started on the right foot as we all climb to Hyper Tier together. Don't be afraid to play Void, even though everyone else is doing it. It often helps you win. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, have an absolutely awesome day.